Hey guys, it's James here from eBassGuitar, and in today's bass guitar lesson I want to show you how to learn the modes and make them make musical sense. If you're a beginner to intermediate bass guitar player, make sure you check out this lesson all the way to the end. Hey guys, it's James here from eBassGuitar, and in today's bass guitar lesson I want to show you how to learn the modal scales and help you understand them so they make musical sense. One of the things I see time and time again with my students in the Bass Lab Plus is they often come to me really super confused about the modes. They've learned all these scales and just really don't know how to apply them. So today I want to show you a little hack or a little trick that one of my early teachers showed me, which was the key to making them make musical sense for me. So just before we hit the lesson content, I want you to know there's a completely free PDF that comes with this lesson where you can see all of the scales that we're discussing today written out. So if you want to grab your copy, make sure you click the link in the description below. Also, if you're watching this on YouTube and want more lessons designed specifically for the beginner to intermediate bass player, make sure you hit the red subscribe button that's somewhere on this page. So one of the things I've seen time and time again with students that come to me is they've learned all of the modal scales, but the problem is they've learnt them in isolation. So let me demonstrate. They would have learnt C Ionian to begin with, and then D Dorian, and then E Phrygian, and then F Lydian, etc. But they really don't know how to then use that information to make it make musical sense. But there's a shift that one of my teachers showed me, a little trick or a little hack, which really started to make the whole of this system come alive for me. And it contained three things. The first thing was starting them all off one key note. So in this case, we're going to start them all off an E. The second one was using a drone. So in this case, is using an open E like this, and relating all of the notes to that one drone or root note or key note. And then the last one was associating a style or function to each scale, so you knew exactly how to use it and exactly where it was useful. So what we're going to do today is start all 7 of the modal scales on an E on the A string at fret 7, and then we're going to use the open E string on a 4-string bass as a drone. And then we're going to look at how the shapes and all of the various intervals and sounds start to change. So let's start with an E Ionian scale. So what we're going to do is just go up each note of the scale like this, like that, and literally play each note one by one so you can hear how it sounds against the drone note. Then play all of the chord tones, and the chord tones are the root, the 3rd, the 5th and the 7th, because this will give us the foundation or the chord which goes with each scale. So like that, and then start experimenting with the 2nd, the 4th and the 6th, or the extensions as we can call it, so we can hear how the other notes of the scale fit in. Like that. And then we can try making little bass lines or ideas from this. Like that. I really think of the Ionian scale as the foundation of all Western music. Is where diatonic harmony comes from. So really this is our base, it is our core where we start learning music from. So that is the function of how I think of the Ionian scale. So let's move on to E Dorian now. So we're going to go up the scale. You can really hear that minor sound in there. Then let's look at the chord tones which are in there. So we could have E, G, B and D like that. So we can really hear the foundation or the chord which goes behind that particular scale. Now it's good to start looking at the other notes in there. I think of the Dorian as the foundation of modal jazz, and really what it comes back to is that major 6th which is in the scale. So like that. So I like to make up a little bass line like this which has the major 6th in. So where this really starts getting powerful is where you compare one scale to the next. So you can look at the shape on the neck, but you can also look at the sounds it's creating. So let me demonstrate. I'm going to go from the Ionian to the Dorian scale here. So. And then up the Dorian. And what you can hear is the sounds and the functions of the scales now are so much more pronounced. So let's take a look at the Phrygian scale now. So let's go up the individual notes. So we're going to start on the E, to the F, to the G, to the A, to the B, to the C, to the D, to the E, like that. So. Now let's play the chord tones. So there's basically a minor chord which sits behind this scale, and really the foundation of this scale I like to think of as being the Spanish scale because of this flattened second which is in there. So what I'm going to do now is start to really pull that out. So. You can hear everything becomes so much more pronounced when you're constantly comparing it to that E drone that you're creating with the open string. So this scale is used a lot in Spanish music, but it's also used a lot in heavy metal too. And really the most important thing you need to know about it is that flattened second, because that is the core of the sound. So let's take a look at the E Lydian scale and talk about the intervals in there. So we're going to start on the root. Then we're going to go to the second, we're going to go to the third, and we're going to go to the sharpened fourth, we're going to go to the fifth, the sixth, the seventh, and the octave. And really how I think about this is simply as a major scale, but with a sharpened fourth. And this is a much trickier scale to use, but the most easiest function for this scale is to think of it as a jazz scale. So if you wanted to improvise over a major chord, but you wanted to make it a little brighter, have a little bit more character in it, you could sharpen the fourth and use the Lydian scale and it would work really, really nicely. And that sharpened fourth also gives the whole tone sound as well, because we end up with 3 whole tones at the beginning. So it's quite an unusual sound. So we can create little grooves like this, which are quite cool using the Lydian sound. So just think of the Lydian scale as a jazz scale, which you can use to make the major scale just a little bit more exciting and a little bit more interesting. So let's talk about the Mixolydian mode. This is really one of the most important modes you should know, because we can use this over dominant or 7th chords. So let's talk about the notes in the scale. We're going to start off with the root, the second, the third, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th, and then the flattened 7th like that. So let's play the chord tones. We're going to have the root, the 3rd, the 5th, and then this dominant or flattened 7th like that. So let's just compare that sound to the Lydian one that we had before. So we had this. Then compare it to the Mixolydian. And then you can hear how it can be used in styles like funk when we create grooves like this. So that's using all notes from the E Mixolydian scale. So guys, if you're enjoying this lesson, I would love it if you could jump over to eBassGuitar and check out the Bass Lab Plus. This is a training program designed especially for the beginner to intermediate bass guitar player. And inside the membership there's a specific course called the Modes Mastery course, which teaches you all of these scales and concepts right from the ground upwards. Also, the course is there designed for the beginner bass player, those bass players who want to learn blues, those who want to learn walking bass, those who want to learn rock. So there's everything you need if you want to just rock out at home, or even get out there gigging in the worship band, or go to a jam session, or join a band. If you want to join the Bass Lab Plus, there is a link in the description below where you can join free today with a 14-day trial. Now let's talk about the Aeolian scale now, because this is super important again, because in my view, this is the core minor scale that we need to know. So let's go through the intervals. So we're going to start off with the root, the second, the flattened third, the fourth, the fifth, the flattened sixth, the seventh, and the eighth. Let's go up the chord tones, which are going to be the root, the fifth, the third, and the fifth, and the seventh, which will give us all of the important notes in the E minor chord. Like that. So the function I associate with the Aeolian scale, or the Aeolian scale in general, is it is our core minor scale. So if you're in a minor key, this is the scale that you need to know. So if you've heard songs by Santana such as Black Magic Woman or Ain't No Sunshine by Bill Withers, all of these relate directly to this particular scale. But what I want to show you now is the difference between the Aeolian and the Dorian. It's only literally one note, and that is the flattened sixth. And that is the key distinction between the two scales, and that's the sound that we need to get into our heads. So let's pull a bass line out which will demonstrate the difference. So what we're going to do is we're going to use Aeolian to begin with, and really pull out that flattened sixth note. But now I'm going to change it to a major sixth from the Dorian scale. So you can hear me switching between those two notes. The Dorian minor scale just has this slightly brighter sound. So these are the distinctions which is really important to make when understanding the modal system. And understanding these differences is what will start bringing these scales to life and actually make them more useful when you're out in the real world. So let's look at Locrian now, which is the last of the 7 modes. This is probably the most challenging mode of all to use. But first of all, let's talk through the individual notes. So we're going to start off with the root. We're going to go to the flattened second. We're going to go to the third. Flattened third, that is. We're going to go to the fourth. Then we're going to go to the flattened fifth there. Then we're going to go to the flattened sixth. And then we're going to go to the flattened seventh, and then we're going to go to the octave. So the scale sounds like this in its entirety. So how I think of Locrian is as a scale which works over a minor 7 flat 5 chord or a half diminished chord. It's the same thing, principally because the chord tones are a root, a flattened third, a flattened fifth, and a flattened seventh, like that. And really, the minor 7 flat 5 chord is chord 2 of a minor 2-5-1. And that's how I literally think of this scale. Nothing more complicated than that. But if you really don't understand that, that's not to matter, because this really is the most advanced scale of the lot. And it's more important to understand really how the first 6 modes work to begin with. I also think of this as like the Spanish scale, so the Phrygian scale. The Phrygian has a natural fifth, and in this scale we're flattening it, and that's the difference between the two scales. So I'm always looking at the difference between the individual notes of each scale and understanding how the sounds work. So what I'm going to do is play up and down the scale and create a bass line using this particular mode. So guys, I've been through all 7 of the modal scales now using an E as a root note. Don't forget, if you want to see all of these written out, make sure you grab the free PDF. There's a link in the description below. But the crucial thing now is to understand how the shapes work on the neck using just one root note, and then listen to the different sounds of each scale and explore the different notes and how they change. Sometimes there's only 1 or 2 notes changing from scale to scale, as I showed you with Dorian and Aeolian. So go away and have some fun. I'm just going to finish this lesson off now and go through each scale one by one and improvise and just listen to how the individual sound changes as I go through all 7 of the modes using the open E as a drone, creating riffs and different ideas using these particular modes. So let's start off with Ionian to begin with. Let's move on to Dorian now. Let's move on to Phrygian. Let's move on to Lydian. Let's move on to Mixolydian. Let's move on to Aeolian. And let's finish up with Locrian. And let's go all the way back round to Ionian. So guys, that's the end of today's bass guitar lesson. If you've enjoyed this lesson, make sure you download the free PDF cheat sheet, which will show you all of the modes that we've discussed today written out. There's a link in the description below. Also, if you're a beginner to intermediate bass player and looking to push your bass playing onto that next stage, jump over to eBassGuitar.com and check out the Bass Lab Plus, where there is a complete syllabus for the beginner to intermediate bass player, which is super easy to understand. There's a link in the description where you can join free today with a 14-day trial. Cheers, I've been James from eBassGuitar, and I'll catch you next time.